Good afternoon, and welcome to the Digital Educator, Cal Poly Pomona's experiment in online civic participation. This is the first of what we hope will be many interactive cybercasts exploring the impact of 21st century experiments in education on the citizens of the United States and the world. I'm your host, Mike Berman, the Vice President for Instructional and Information Technology here at Cal Poly Pomona, and I'm coming to you live from the studios of Mediavision on the Cal Poly Pomona campus. Today we're going to explore California's investment in high-speed networking for the K-12 community, the Digital California Network. But before I introduce my guests, I would like to tell you a bit about the technology we're using today. We're pleased to partner with Avocast in using their interactive software to host this discussion. By using their web-based Avocaster system, you will be able to send questions to me during the discussion, and we'll pick a representative sample of these questions to present to my guests. We're also going to be asking you some questions using an interactive polling mechanism. This is an opportunity to learn about an important project, the Digital California Network, while experimenting with new technology. Our goal for the Digital Educator is to open a dialogue on modern learning while at the same time testing the limits of new technology. It's my pleasure now to introduce my guests. Tom West is the President and Executive Director of CNIC, the Corporation for Education Network Initiatives in California, and the executive sponsor of the Digital California Network. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Mike.
We're also joined by John Vail, Director of Applications Coordination for Digital California Network. John?
Hi, Michael.
And from Cal Poly Pomona, we have our Dean of the College of Education and Integrative Studies, Richard Navarro. Richard is also the Chair of the California Commission on Technology and Education. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we welcome you, our viewers, who we invite to participate with us in this discussion. Before we start our conversation, we'd like to ask you to answer the following question. How familiar are you with the Digital California Network? A poll should appear on your screen, and we'd like you to respond by indicating your level of familiarity with DCN. Enter your answer now, and we'll summarize the results in a few minutes. Right now, I'd like to start the discussion with Tom West. Tom, give us a brief overview. What is the Digital California Network, and how did it begin?
Well, Mike, the Digital California Network is an initiative that was inaugurated by the Governor of California, Governor Davis, and the state legislature to extend the advanced networking capabilities that already serve the higher education community, the CSU, the University of California, Stanford, Caltech, University of Southern California, and the community colleges, to extend that capability to the K-12 community.
And what are the goals of the Digital California Network? What do we hope to accomplish? Why are we investing a lot of money in building this?
Well, the fundamental goals undergirding this project is to increase information resource sharing across the K-12 community, as well as vertically with the higher education community, and to increase the collaboration within the education industry, if you will, within California, as well as to extend our capabilities to, or that resource sharing and collaboration across the country and the globe, if you will.
So this is connected with other initiatives outside California, as well as with the higher education networks in California?
Yes. Most critically, this is an integral part of the Internet 2 initiative. California is one of several states that is called a system-wide education group participant in Internet 2. So by virtue of this project being launched, we are enabling all of the K-12 schools and all of the colleges and universities and research institutions in California to be an integral part of a global undertaking for Internet 2 and other advanced networking capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Where are we now? How far along is the development of the Digital California Network at this time?
Well, the major thrust up to this juncture has been to extend the network, to take the network, the backbone of the network, and to extend it into each of the 58 counties in the state. And as we sit here, we have in our first round of activity, we've intended to have 71 what we call node sites in the 58 counties. We're at 53 of those as I sit here today, and by the end of June we hope to be in the neighborhood of 65. We have a few difficult spots. I mean, people perceive California, if you're outside of California, you perceive California as being LA, San Francisco, or San Diego. But we have a lot of rural part of this state north of Sacramento that we need to reach, as well as the eastern part of the behind the Sierra Nevada. We're so pleased that we have a game plan in place to reach all of the sites, all of the counties within this next few months.
That's great. So you're getting close to the first phase of the
That's
completion
correct.
of the network. We have the results of the poll, which we got from those of you watching right now. And for those online right now, 9% say they're very familiar with the Digital California Network, 33% say they're somewhat familiar, and 58% are not familiar at all. So this is a wonderful opportunity to educate a group of people about what we're trying to accomplish with this network. In fact, I find as I go around the state and talk to people in institutions and corporations that many people have heard of it, or the Digital California Network, or the Digital California Project, as I think it was previously known. But a lot of people really aren't sure what it's going to do and what the goals are and what we hope to accomplish with it. Let me ask you, John, looking at it from an applications point of view, we can talk all day about bandwidth and connectivity, but in the end, people want to know that they're getting value in terms of education. From your perspective as the applications coordinator, what do you see as the key goals for the network, and what do we hope to accomplish?
Well, the challenges that are faced by California schools today are pretty deep and broad, but they really do focus on one important thing, and that is the achievement of the students in schools. In order to improve the performance of California's kids, it will also be important for us to focus on professional development of teachers, both of teachers who are in place now and those who are coming into the system. And so if you take a look at those twin challenges, this network bringing rich resources to classrooms to help improve instruction, plus using the network, a variety of agencies using the network to address the professional development needs of teachers and paraprofessionals, I might add, given the new Leave No Child Behind Act's requirements, that you can see two areas where this network can be a very rich resource. We're hoping, in fact we're seeing from both the University of California and the California State University system, as well as the K-12 providers, the large county offices and districts that have programs that serve these two needs, folks coming up, stepping to the plate and saying, we'd like to use your network to take our resource to the classroom. And that we think is pretty powerful.
What are some of the kind of examples of resources that you see the network bringing into the classroom?
Well, we're pretty excited. There are a number of projects out there that we have become part of. Now, one of the things you have to realize that when you're creating a network like this is you're stepping into a territory that is unexplored. It's rather like a chicken or egg situation. If you think about the kinds of resources people were producing for the Internet during its development time, folks really got excited as the Internet became much more available in home schools and other places. So as we're producing this network, we're kind of hatching the egg, or maybe creating the chicken. We're creating the broadband network that will reach into the classroom, that stimulates developers to say, okay, now it's there. Now I can invest my time and resources in creating things that will use that network. And so to answer your question, a number of institutions, the Merlot project that the CSU operates, the University of California's Advanced Placement Program, which is called UCCP, the TEAMS resources that come from the Los Angeles County Office of Education, or the Math Vision from San Diego County Office, the English for All program from Sacramento County, all require high bandwidth to reach out to do their work. Mm-hmm. And as a result, in the last few months, we've been seeing these projects finding ways and means of making that happen for schools.
Mm-hmm. I want to turn to you in a second, Richard, and talk about the teacher preparation aspect, but we have a question here that I think I'll offer up to Tom or John. It's kind of an interesting one. How does a school become connected to the Digital California Network?
Well, in the implementation of our network, what we're doing is putting a node in each county, and at least one. And as we initiated the planning, we found out that many counties and many large school districts already had district-wide and county-wide networks. So with the implementation of the first-round nodes, nearly 70% of the schools will be immediately connected, and about 70% of the students. We have just completed our second-round planning, and the Digital California Program Steering Committee adopted the second-round plan, and the Scenic Board endorsed that action on the part of the Program Steering Committee just yesterday. We will extend the network, reaching another 1.6 million, from 4 million up to about 5.6 million, and up to about 90%, over 90% of the schools. So in many instances, that problem has been addressed already by the solid planning that has taken place by counties and districts. Where it hasn't, and where school districts are standing outside of existing county networks, they can either become part of the county network or they can connect directly to a node site in their county.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I have a question that just came in from Ted Kahn, and he would like to know from John if the Digital California Network includes museums and libraries and other educational providers, as well as pre-service and professional development for K-12 teachers. Any moves in that direction? Actually,
Ted, thanks for asking that question. It's a good one. The Digital California Project is an initiative that's designed to connect K-12 public education to this Internet 2 implementation in California. The idea that we would connect other educational institutions, because frankly, if you think about museums, libraries, and a number of other resources in this very resource-rich state, really do qualify as educational components. The Scenic Board, the organization that actually sponsors the development of the network, is right now considering a policy on how to connect those resources directly to the backbone network. At this time, there are a number of museums, especially in the Los Angeles basin, that have already developed relationships with member universities and are providing their resources across the network as we speak. And certainly those libraries and museums that are operated by the state of California will be included in the network as we build the implementation out.
Great. I have a question coming in from Uyan, but we'll get to that in just a minute. First, I want to go to Richard Navarro for a minute, because I think you have a unique perspective as a Dean of the College of Education here, but also as somebody who's working very directly with some of the local school districts. I'd like to get your perspective on the role of the network in professional development, and also what you're seeing working with your partners at the actual school level, and what level of participation and interest you're seeing in the Digital California Network.
Sure. Well, we're really excited about the development of the network and really the possibilities that it provides for us. This morning, for instance, I was with a group of teachers that have been engaged in training other teachers and integrating technology into the learning process. Typically, that professional development activity occurs over summer intensive institutes, and then over the year through Saturday or evening workshops. With the network, we have the possibility of actually reaching the teachers directly in their workplace and being able to work with them really hand in hand as they are teaching in the classroom, finding new ways to integrate the technology into the classroom. We've been experimenting with this using video conferencing technology, and just to learn some of the organizational and pedagogical challenges to connecting across geographic distance in this way. And we're really excited about the possibilities there. And it's not only that we will have a chance to reach into the classrooms to work with teachers, but classroom teachers will also have a chance to reach back and to bring to the university real-life examples of their daily practice, and to pose questions as accomplished teachers in the classroom for our beginning teachers who are also learning how to teach, because teaching itself is learning how to teach is a continuum. So you don't come out of the university an accomplished teacher. You come out of the university with the knowledge and skills to really engage in that professional practice and to continue the learning process. And we really see the network as enabling that learning to occur in a much more dynamic fashion.
Well, you'd probably be in a good place to answer this question, Richard. We have a question about the access to technology for schools that are in poorer areas. Will they have to pay for their own equipment? What are the options that those schools have? I know that you're working with some districts that are certainly not among the richer ones in the area.
Well, and that's also an important issue for the Commission on Technology and Learning. The Commission was established a little over a year ago by a bill carried by then Assemblywoman, now Senator Nell Soto, in AB 598, to develop a master plan for technology and education for the state of California. It's clear that one of the big issues that we face in California is the equity challenge. How do we ensure, if we believe that the technology is a valuable tool for learning, how do we ensure that all children have access to that learning tool? And one of the things that we have realized, and it really gets back to Ted's question earlier and John's comments, is that this is not just an issue about schools. This is really an issue about learning. And learning occurs in lots of places, and technology really helps us get beyond the schoolhouse walls. So when we're really talking about technology and learning, we are talking about the learning that occurs before school, we're talking about learning that occurs during school hours, and the learning that occurs outside of school, whether it be in community centers, libraries, museums, homes, whatever the case may be. And that's one of the issues that the Commission is looking at very carefully. There are a number of federal and state programs that are working towards addressing this issue to close the gap in access to technology. And we're intent that the master plan that the Commission develops will really help push that along and really help set a direction of how we ensure that all kids have access to that technology.
I know there was a program called the E-Rate. Is that still an ongoing program? What is that, and how do schools tap into that?
I was just looking at the federal government's website earlier in preparation for this meeting, as a matter of fact, and this discussion, and in the ESEA reauthorization, the Leave No Child Behind bill from the President, they have taken the E-Rate and a number of other programs and folded them into a block grant program that's coming to the state. But my understanding is the technology coming to the state from the federal government is actually increasing, but its distribution will vary from the way it has been allocated in the past. So there will be both competitive as well as block grant opportunities for school districts.
Tom, you had a comment?
I think it's important to note not only do schools in California have access to the E-Rate program, the federal E-Rate program, but in the state there is the California Teleconnect Fund program. I don't know how many states have undertaken such a program, but California certainly has done that. And so schools and districts and even Scenic with the Digital California Network now qualify for Teleconnect Fund rebates, if you will. So, for example, just this past week, or the past several months, we ran a program for applications for Teleconnect rebate funds. We anticipate having rebates in terms of circuit cost of circuit from our hub site out to a county node qualifies for a 50% rebate. So we had decided, through the Program Steering Committee and the Scenic Board, decided that those funds should then be plowed back in to help last mile issues with schools. So the Program Steering Committee a week ago and the Board yesterday accepted those decisions. We will be awarding on July 1 about $1.4 million to help schools to increase their connectivity to the networking. So California, I think, is in a perhaps a better position than most states because the state did take the initiative to create the California Teleconnect Fund to augment and supplement the E-Rate funding.
Mm-hmm. So you've really got both ends of the spectrum, at least in some attempt to cover it. Just to give us let me throw out a quiz for the table here. Just to give us some sense of the size of the issue, roughly how many schools are there in the state of California?
Well,
sites, I guess you would call them?
there are different numbers, but we just completed a last mile study at the request of the legislature, and the number that's in the report, it's embedded in my mind now, is 7,936 school sites. But I suspect that that is not the total number. And we found out that about 80% of those schools are connected at T1 or better. But we still have 20%, or about 2,070 schools that do not have T1 connectivity. And we consider T1 connectivity the bare minimum to undertake the Digital California Network. We would prefer that every school that have as minimum a DS3. If you think of, for those that are not familiar with the numbers, a T1 is equal to 1.5. A DS3 is equal to 45. So 45 enables the kind of multimedia that Mike and his colleagues in higher education enjoy, and K-12 needs to enjoy that as well. So one of the challenges in the state, first challenge is to get every school to at least a T1. The second challenge is to move that up to a DS3.
Okay, well, another question that's come in, I think it's a really important aspect of this. Let's assume we can get a T1 to every school. Let's assume we can build up the Digital California Network, put computers in every classroom. How many teachers know how to use it and make effective use of it? Where are the challenges there, and how are we going to help the teachers use the technology in a way that's really going to help the students? Richard, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a really important issue because we are talking about not only new teachers coming into the teaching profession, having the skills necessary, but also those that are currently in practice developing those skills. I think it's fascinating now because we're in a situation in many cases in which the students that are in the schools are actually more familiar and comfortable with the technology than their teachers, and so I think there's growing demand for that use. The CSU has sponsored over the last 2 years with support from the state and one of the governor's professional development programs to prepare teachers to use technology in the classrooms, and have during that, over those 2 years, trained something like 10,000 or more teachers. Over 80% of whom have reported back in a recent survey that they feel more confident not only in their use of technology in the classroom, but also as teachers as well. So clearly, I think that this has had the desired impact to help the teachers to really get to the issue that John raised earlier, improving student learning in the classroom.
And you know, the federal government for the last 4 years has operated a program that unfortunately I think is sunsetting, but it's the Preparing Tomorrow's Teachers to Use Technology grant program that has had a substantial effect on teacher preparation programs in preparing the teachers who are coming to us now, coming into the profession. Most of those folks are coming in at what the ISTE standards talk about, beyond the ability to use the tools that we see in classrooms today for personal productivity. They're already moved on. They've already conquered those mountains, and now they're into the place of learning how to use technology to help kids learn. So as we experience more and more new teachers coming into the system, as we all know, in the next 5 years or so, there's going to be a massive number of new folks entering the profession. Our challenge will be to be working with their seniors, the people who are going to mentor those folks as they learn to be teachers, as they enter into the learning community that Richard talked about. And so the CSU's efforts have had a remarkable effect in this state.
Tom? We are clearly in a hump problem to get over a period where we have a large percentage of our teacher force that predates the kinds of programs that Richard and his colleagues have instituted. I think, but I think this is not, I want to make sure that everybody understands this is not an age problem. It's really an attitude problem. But the thing that I heard yesterday from a representative from the CSU is that 91% of the students report that they have a personal computer coming into the university. So we don't have an attitude, we don't have a familiarity or the lack of familiarity problem with the prospective teachers of tomorrow. Right. We have a challenge in terms of schools of education incorporating the uses of technology in the preparation of those teachers, and then those teachers being able to get into the field, and because of the goals that we're talking about here, being able to collaborate in a sense of communities, and be able to share information resources across the network, wherever they may be in their teaching assignment. So, you know, I'm very optimistic about the movement here in terms of professional development, curriculum development, putting in the highway. There's certainly a lot to be done, but it's gratifying that the state has done a lot to date.
I have to jump in because, Tom, you've alluded to collaboration. Richard talks about learning communities. That is the real gem at the core of this network. This is a way for our education community writ large, not just California, but certainly starting at that core, to be able to begin to talk about building knowledge together as professionals and having it in an environment, in a facilitated environment that can be anywhere, anytime. That is a really powerful tool we've never had before.
I want to come back to that thread, but right now I'd like to ask our viewers question, and we're going to give you another poll. We'd like to know what you think. What are the most important barriers from your perspectives to the adoption of technology in schools? So we've got a poll coming up that's going to ask you about that, and we'll see what you think about that. I'd like to follow up on that aspect of collaboration, John. Certainly, many of us in higher education see this as a tremendous opportunity. We've mentioned museums and other institutions. What about collaboration between schools, between students, between teachers in various schools? Can you point to any examples or projects or ideas that you see coming along that are really exciting examples of that?
Well, you know, the thing that has really attracted folks to begin with on this is the idea of resource provisioning, which is the examples I gave you were pretty much folks that have something great they want to share with others. I think the community in which we're now introducing these technologies has been limited to the 2, 4, 6 of the classroom. You know, the 2 covers of the book, the 4 walls of the classroom, and the 6 hours of the day. This is a way for us to break down those barriers and to begin to engage them in conversations. Now, there are certainly a number of California teachers who have been engaged with their colleagues locally and even nationally through organizations, and with university colleagues through various projects. But now we have a very rich, a very fertile environment here in which we can connect, as you said, classroom to do research or to contribute to research. And so if you think about some of the projects that have been going on, the JASON projects, some of these national ones that have been facilitated by the internet, and add to that the capacity to do real broadband experimentation using visualizations sorts of tools, being able to link data from thousands of high school students into a research project become feasible, where the internet didn't allow it because of the limited capacity.
I think that it's fair to say that there's been a lot of collaboration, one-on-one, between schools of education and local school districts historically. One of the challenges, I think, is for people in schools of education as well as in school districts to break the barrier of the one-on-one to the one-in-many. How do you scale a relationship that perhaps Cal Poly Pomona School of Education has had with the area people, and invite in teachers from Tule Lake who heretofore could not participate because they're at the northern part of the state, but now via network could in fact be an integral part of a collaboration and a sharing. So there's lots of learning that has to take place in terms of how to scale collaboration, how to engage larger groups of people, and have meaningful dialogue.
And you know, what we're addressing here is a fundamental issue, and that is equity across the state. Right. I mean, Tom, you talked about it in terms of the legislature's objectives, the governor's objectives to reach that. But in fact, what we now have is our first opportunity to identify collaborations and resources and make those available to every student in the state, not limited by their closeness to a freeway or a beach, not limited to the capacity, potentially, of the professional staff that's available to them. I mean, if you think about some of those advanced placement courses, sometimes kids can't get them not only because they're just one or two kids, but because there's no one there to teach advanced placement chemistry. It's very powerful what we're able to provide through this network.
I want to just jump in here and give you the poll results because our viewers can see them, but the people here can't. I think you'll be interested to know we sort of brainstormed what we thought would be some of the issues: access speed, institutional barriers, time constraints, lack of content, unfamiliarity with technology, and outdated equipment. And the answers were spread right across the board. So those all appear to be issues. Interestingly, you'll be glad to know, Tom, that access speed did eke out the #1 position. So clearly people do see that as a major issue that people are watching today. But it's pretty clear that there's a number of different issues.
I think I don't want to suggest that access speed is really the paramount issue, but in many ways, I think if people know that the highway is there, that they can get to it, and that there are going to be valuable resources, information resources available to them, people are very creative about how to get familiar with it, how to connect with other people who have knowledge, how to get the tools that they need. Not that we can ignore that, but if you don't have the highway, they can't drive it.
Right. Well, let's talk about collaboration going beyond just within the state of California. You mentioned that this is a component of Internet 2. How will the Digital California Network lend itself to collaboration between states and institutions in other states, or internationally for that matter?
Well, in a number of ways. One is that people will find people. They just do. It's just human nature. They will find it. But under the Internet 2 umbrella, we have created the Internet 2 K-20, not just K-12, K-20 initiative, which is designed to begin to look at applications and resource areas that are being developed in respective states or respective organizations that could be made available to all of the institutions across the state. And clearly, through John and others, we're actively involved in that group. We have 3 persons on the advisory group, John Vail, John Fleshman from the Sacramento County Office of Education, and Leanne Parker from the University of California. So there is a national initiative going. We're actively participating in it. And in addition to that, because there's always this West Coast left out phenomena, we have joined forces with our colleagues in Washington who've already built out a K-20 network and are very interested in the applications area. So we have what we're calling the Pacific Lighthouse Project that we're just starting to crank up, with the intent of how can we do things on the West Coast that will be of significance not only for California and Washington, but for our colleagues across the country. On an international basis, I think at least initially this is going to be a lot of initiative on the part of the local people. There may be K-12 schools in Stockton, California that will connect with counterparts in Amsterdam or Hong Kong or Singapore or someplace, or Australia. The network is there to facilitate that. There isn't currently an organized effort, what I would call an education global initiative, but I think just given the access, people will be creative and find their peers elsewhere.
I'd like to give you an example of, I think, how the network can really help with that. I was at a demonstration 2 weeks ago in the Walnut Valley Unified School District here in the area, and they're planning to build a new school. And so the architectural firm that was hired to work with the district in building the school, together with the architectural students here at Cal Poly Pomona, have been working with a 6th grade class at Chaparral Middle School to design this new school. Everything from the structure to the implements within the building itself, the school desk and so forth. But they've also connected with a school in Sendai, Japan, and have been working with them and getting their ideas for this design. And so we participated 2 weeks ago in a video conference in which the children in these two schools were sharing ideas with the architects as the audience, essentially, on what they would see as being the school for tomorrow. The network provides the opportunity to make that a part of everyday occurrence in the teaching and learning within the classroom. I mean, that's how powerful this is, and how it begins to shrink the geographic differences and overcome those barriers.
You know, Richard, the California Parks Department has a unique mission. We're talking about museums and libraries. Here's a good example of a collaboration that comes up because of the network. Their unique mission is to educate California citizens on the rich cultural and natural history resources of the state. And one of the ways they've done that for years is allowed students to come on to the various parks and take field trips. However, a student in Compton can't really make it to the Sutter Gold Park in Colusa. It's a 450-mile drive. It's just not going to happen for a lot of those kids. So what they've decided, they've seized on, is the idea that they could use this network to provide virtual field trips with wraparound resources that help kids collaborate with the docents, the rangers, etc. on the park. And a great example of that was out at, in Orange County, out at Crystal Cove a few months back, where they literally took park rangers underwater, beamed back from the boat to a truck sitting on the beach, images of the coral beds. I guess they're the only coral beds in North America. I didn't know that. But and that those images were controlled, where the scientists put their heads, were controlled by students at Saddleback Valley Unified School District, safely on shore. And it was just a great demonstration of how you could combine the resources of an educational network. By the way, this all went through our network via the Orange County Office of Education. So it was a really great demonstration, and they're really putting a lot of effort into thinking about how do you do these tough-to-reach places and make them accessible to California's kids. So it just stimulates these kinds of conversations and ideas.
A lot of the barriers that people have to real pedagogical reform or school improvement aren't technological, obviously. And our friend Ted, again, raises the issue of barriers to, especially to cross-collaboration in education, the old habits, the lack of rewards and systemic incentives that encourage real collaboration. I know we've all seen examples of paper collaborations that don't necessarily go anywhere. And clearly what we want to do is encourage meaningful collaborations that are powerful and are going to have a positive impact on learning. Not really a technology question, but what role does Digital California Network play in addressing that issue?
Well, I could start out and say that the easy answer is it removes one of the barriers. That is, it is a reliable communication mechanism. Again, that's just a pipe. I mean, the tools that are used at either end of it. This is our friend Ted Kahn again, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Ted is probably aware of the collaboratory work at Northwestern University, which is around helping teachers work together across various segments, from the university right down to the K-12 environment. Those kinds of relationships develop because the networks are available, and they now have a way to use tools together. The University Elementary School at UCLA, for example, has some relationships now that are facilitated between the graduate school faculty there at UCLA, their school, and their partner schools that are out in the LA Unified School District. So these things are just beginning. But again, removing those barriers have to do with mission, have to do with interest, have to do with funding. And those are all tough issues.
Right.
I think it's fair to say that those are challenges that exist. What we can do within the Digital California Network apparatus, primarily, if you remember, John's role is the Director of Applications Coordination. So,
and I'm the entire staff, by the way. So,
so we are not content providers. We are not developers. But I think one of the things that I've already seen emerge is that by virtue of this enterprise, this project, if you will, we can serve as a catalyst. And a catalyst, if you remember, is an agent of change without being an ingredient in the change. So I think that's the role we play. And already I've seen evidence through John's efforts where people who didn't know people have been brought together in a forum, and as a result of that, the outcome is that they go away and they begin to work together. So I think in that regard, that's a role that we can play. Bringing the museums, I know that Ted and others, have aggregated their thinking, and now they're champing at the bit to behave as a group, and we need to be responsive to that. So it's that kind of relationship that I think at the end of the day, we're in the highway department. But at the same time, we can maybe stimulate what comes on the highway.
Sure. I'd like to respond to that as well, and I think that, and use another term besides catalyst, I think another term we can think of is also an enabler. I see the network as really enabling some activity that otherwise would be very difficult to achieve. I'm going to put in a plug for the Commission on Technology and Learning, because we have a series of focus questions that we're addressing. And if anybody would like to respond to those questions, you can go to our website at www.cde.ca.gov. And then our slash
do that
CTL.
Again.
It's www.cde.ca.gov/CTL. And on that website are our series of focus questions. My favorite question is, how does technology cause us to think differently about teaching and learning? And I think that that is something that we have got to really focus more attention on. That's where our sociologists and anthropologists can be very helpful in helping us to learn the kind of new organizational behaviors that are going to be required to work across those boundaries, if you will, that exist between K-12 and higher education, that exists between the teachers that are in service and teachers that are beginning service, administration and teachers, and so forth. Our friend John Cradler has a very interesting three-dimensional cube. And he talks about the applications with the Digital California Network. And I was observing to him, and just in some of my own experiences, that as we work across these different dimensions, both sector dimensions, age, geographic differences, and so forth, the tendency, I think the human tendency, is to stay within our boxes, within our boundaries, in our cube, where it's familiar. And so I think that we are limited only by our own imaginations, really, to think about how we can use this technology to break out of those cubes and make connections with other groups. Then I think we do, as what Thomas said earlier, people will find each other, and I think that we'll be creating knowledge in very different ways than we can even imagine today.
Michael, can our producers project the cube? I think they have that slide.
Well, we'll ask Maria to bring up the cube in a minute. We have the triangle here, too. And apparently this is...
Pyramid.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
It looks like a triangle in two dimensions, but as you can see as I rotate, it's actually a pyramid. And I know that Tom is very identified with the pyramid, and we'll get to that in a minute because we want to hear the story of the pyramid. For those who haven't heard it before, those who have heard it before probably don't want to hear it, but that's okay. We have a question related to content. Clearly, you're not a content provider, but you're enabling access to content in the Digital California Network. And clearly, one of the most important partners, if not the most important partners, are libraries. And Glenn asks, what is happening in terms of connection with county libraries? So we've got a connection to each county. Are there plans to bring county libraries into it? Obviously, county libraries play a big role in education, and a lot of our students, K-12 students, spend a lot of time in the library. Any activity in that area?
Not any formal activity at the moment. Lots of conversation one-on-one. We've met with representatives of the State Library. I made a presentation to the CLA, California CLA, back in October. So there's inquiry back and forth. We've tried to keep our eye on the immediate target, and that is getting the connectivity to the K-12. We're fully cognizant that county and public libraries are an integral part of the education process in those respective communities, and certainly we want to be working with them. Finding point of entry, what we don't want to do is deal one-off. So finding a point of entry as to how to deal with the public libraries in a consistent and cohesive fashion is something that's on our agenda to do probably in the next several months, as well as other community organizations, particularly in the part of the state where population is sparse, geography is difficult, telecommunications is rare, and you actually need to aggregate the needs of several kinds of functions: education, community service, public libraries, health services, to really get a critical mass to leverage getting the provision of broadband, the real broadband capabilities into those areas. And that's clearly a target, opportunity target for us in the next 12 to 18 months.
Let me take another question from one of our viewers, and it's an interesting question because I think it has a premise behind it, and I want to give this to Richard because it has to do with teachers. Let me just read the question and let you respond, Richard. Why do you think that teachers who are so dedicated to education are reluctant to self-educate in technology tools? First of all, do you agree with the premise?
Yeah. I think that's the first thing is I don't think it's a matter of reluctance on the part of teachers to learn the technology. I think that there's a number of complicating factors involved here. One of them is the time. Teachers are, we expect a tremendous amount of our teachers today, and particularly considering the level which we compensate them for that commitment. I think it really is a tremendous task to be a teacher today. The second is the access to the technology that will allow them to learn these tools. There are some school districts, Pomona Unified School District, for example, that has been investing in providing its teachers broadband internet access in the home, so that the teachers are able to develop the kind of technology tools in their leisure time, and is not expected to be part of an already extended work day for them, and they're able to use that technology to help in their daily tasks as well. And then I think that the other issue is the incentives. We really have to provide the teachers with the incentives. First of all, the expectations that accomplished teaching standards for the very best teaching includes being able to use technology in a proficient manner in the classroom setting, and really reward those teachers for that. The National Board for Professional Teaching Standards has been working very hard at making as a part of what they regard accomplished teaching in the classroom, really the utilization of technology. And over the next 3 years, we're going to see with the National Board the whole process of becoming a National Board certified teacher being done over the network, over the internet.
You know that in places where folks have found tools that really address key instructional objectives, the barriers to use of technology seem to come down pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Another component of that has to be tools that are really well designed, that address very specific or even broad educational needs that apply to classroom challenges today. And you look across the offerings that we see typically, there are not a lot of them that focus like a laser on some of our major issues, and that's something that I've talked a lot with our colleagues in the private sector about, is helping, with our help, understanding what the challenges are that we're facing in classrooms and zeroing in, zero those tools in on those things so that teachers have them, they're reliably available, and that, I think, helps lower the barrier.
That's right. That's right. It becomes a tool to really improve their teaching. You know, we've been talking a lot about teachers, but let's not forget the administrators as well, because the administrators are really key to this too. If the administrator is not familiar with the technology and the power that the technology has for learning, then it's going to be harder for that person to encourage and to really lead that school setting. So you know, we have in AB 75 here in California an opportunity really to help build the skill sets for administrators, not only in the instructional area, state standards, instructional materials and assessments, but also in the role that technology can play to really improve achievement in the classroom. And that's I think an important one, and I know an important goal of the governor as well.
Mike, I'm sitting here thinking that we've been really focusing a lot on the Digital California Network as I mean, that's the theme here. But the Digital California Network and the project that drives it is just really one of many initiatives. I'm reminded that the California Department of Education has launched a number of initiatives. The state has launched a number of initiatives. The Digital High School Project to wire the schools, the C-Learn activity to really try to get a process in place that takes information that has been made available on the internet and qualify it in terms of certifying it as to does this information or these programs, these resources meet the educational outcomes that have been articulated by the state. So there's been really, I think, very able leadership within the state, from the governor, the legislature, the Department of Education, the Secretary of Education, and certainly at the local level, as a person who has been fortunate enough to lead a neutral organization to bring the infrastructure, I have been thoroughly impressed with the quality of the K-12 community, the kind of leadership that has taken place, the kinds of activities that have heretofore been launched. I think what the network does is provides an integration potential that hasn't been here before. I think that's the plus that this particular project brings.
Well, let me throw out sort of a contrarian question. This all sounds very good. We can build these high-speed networks. We can put computers in classrooms. But if I'm a teacher sitting in a classroom, it would be nice to have a high-speed connection. It'd be nice to have all this great access to this content that may or may not be out there. But I've got more immediate needs. You know, my principal wants me to get the scores up on the tests, and furthermore, my students fear for their lives on the way to school, and they have difficult family situations, to say the least. Why should the state be focusing so much resources on building a high-speed network when there are so many more immediate problems that schools face right now?
It's $5 a student, and I don't believe that it's deteriorating. I mean, I understand Maslow's hierarchy need, and clearly safety and security and other needs need to be taken care of, but I don't believe this particular project is detracting from that. I guess the one politically correct thing I should say is this is not funded under Proposition 98 funds. These are general funds. These were designed to augment what is already being done. So, yes, you're always going to have the debate on priorities. I believe in the 21st century. I personally believe in the 21st century. As I said many times, this is not about me, because you can see I'm a sort of an old guy, but it's about my grandchildren and other people's grandchildren. It's about the next generation. It's about the socioeconomic development of this state. It's about the health of the state. And in the 21st century, if you don't have an information technology base, you're going to be a third world entity.
Good answer. Any other comments?
I think you better leave it there.
We did a poll of the viewers, and again, they saw the results, but I passed it along to the group. We asked them what type of computer they were using and how fast they were connecting. It's kind of an interesting snapshot. About half are using a PC and are connecting at broadband speeds, 300 kilobits per second. A quarter were using a Mac, connecting at broadband speeds, and the other quarter were using Macs and PCs connecting at 56K modem speeds.
Let me suggest that none of those speeds are broadband.
Okay.
They're all too slow.
Okay. Well, of course, putting a T1 into a school
No.
is not going to get you broadband either by that definition.
No, I understand that, but
Maybe get one computer can have broadband.
Well, you know, the objective, I think we have. I mean, clearly, in higher ed, we're talking about 10 megabits to the desktop, and clearly that should be the goal we have for every kindergarten or first grader as well. It's just going to take time to get there. We just need to keep pushing.
Richard, in the discussions that the State Council is having on technology, where does the Digital California Network fit into the picture? I guess there are a lot of different issues that you're dealing with. What have been the discussions at the state level, and how does it fit into the overall picture?
We are, well, first of all, we've divided our work into 5 areas. The first is in the area of curriculum, teaching and learning, and the role of technology in that process. The second area is the area that Tom so eloquently addressed, the work skill area, and the role that technology plays in developing the kind of workforce that we need in the future in the state of California. The next is professional development, both teacher and administrator professional development. We're looking at the hardware and technical support necessary to support a technology-rich environment in education. And finally, the issue of funding and budgets. What are the kinds of business plans that school districts, the state needs to look at? What are the kinds of opportunities for resources, and what is the kind of relationship that we can and should be developing with the private sector in order to move this forward? Because after all, if California produces that kind of rich human capital that's going to help us to compete in the future, it's not the public sector that benefits alone, but the private sector also is a big beneficiary for that effort. So we are advisory to the State Board of Education. We'll be producing our plan and submitting it to the State Board at the end of this calendar year. And so it's really going to be the State Board that will be deciding how to move this forward. At this time, as Tom mentioned, the Digital California Network is a neutral entity. The State Board itself has not taken a position on the network. We all realize that it's very much a part of our environment, and it's a very valuable resource. And so we think of it in those terms as a resource that we need to build upon and to provide a direction for the state, and particularly in K-12 education, how this resource can really help leverage learning in the classroom.
We are getting some questions that are coming from people in the K-12 sector, I'm glad to say, so we do have some viewing. We had one earlier about funding, which flipped off my screen. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I've got one here now from Larry Mueller. He writes, we've applied for last mile funding. What criteria is going to be used to award last mile funds? I'm guessing he means to the California fund.
That's us, yeah.
Yeah. What are the kind of criteria that are used to make those awards?
Go ahead, Tom. You're the...
Tom?
This is the good news story.
The fundamental underlying principle is need, and then the second principle on top of that is readiness. So the process has already gone through. There were 124 applications. There were 28 are being awarded. I wish it were more, but that's where the dollars ran out. There will be money again next year, but those two criteria were the basis on which the evaluation team made their recommendations, and the program steering committee of the Digital California Project adopted.
Good. So we should be seeing a lot. That they should be announced fairly soon. Those awards. Is that right?
Yes, if I weren't here today, I'd be working on those letters.
So they're going to probably want to send you right home. I have a question about how California compares to other states. Where are we compared to what other states are doing, or where are we going to be when this is built out?
I think that when we started this project, California was one of the states that did not have a statewide network capability reaching into the K-12 community. Comparison to people like in Missouri, where they have a fairly robust network and they reach all the school districts. The same thing in the state of Washington, and in Virginia. There are a number of states that were clearly ahead of us. In essence, through this initiative, we're going to leapfrog those folks with the robustness of the network. And the other thing that we're concentrating on is in the area of content, bringing content to this network that focuses in on meeting the standards of the state and enabling teachers to get to those resources more readily than they would if they're just swimming out on the internet.
And we have a copy of this slide that John had given us that the viewers probably can't read it too closely, but if you know your geography, you can look and see which states, the states in red, are participating in an Internet 2 program. So those would be among the ones that are the most advanced. So you see the left coast with Washington, Oregon, and California, North Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Virginia, North Carolina, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Missouri. So by that standard, we would join that group. So it looks like probably close to that's probably about close 20. To half the population of the United States, or more than that, because you've got some of the largest states.
Right.
Texas and Florida being a couple of the larger ones that are not currently participating in that project.
You know, Florida does have a statewide network, and Texas can't get their act together.
Yeah, it's a bit misleading, Mike, because there are networks in other states. They just haven't applied for formal participation in the I-2. And this map also is not, don't get the impression that what's going on here is that only those states have Internet 2 connections.
Right.
There are Internet 2 partners in almost every state in the United States, and I say almost because I'm not quite sure. Tom, maybe.
Well, Internet 2 has primarily been a higher education activity until this program came along, and I would have to say that those of us on the West Coast pushed it very, very hard. Yes, every state is a participant in Internet 2, but in those states that are not marked red, those are strictly higher education participants at the moment. One thing I would say too, Mike, is that one of the questions I'm surprised hasn't been asked, well, we have connectivity to the internet, isn't that enough? And my personal view is no. This is about connecting the education enterprise to do education business and bringing resources to the education community that, while they may be on the internet, will not be accessible in terms of the quality of services that we're striving to achieve, that we in fact have achieved in higher education by virtue of, in a sense, the internet was originated by higher education. We have benefited in higher education for 25 years from that. When the internet became a public commodity, it was only 6 months later that we decided, my goodness, what did we give up? We need to do Internet 2, and so we launched Internet 2 in '96. And the good news is, through the impetus of several people, we said it's not enough just to serve higher education. We have to serve all the education enterprise.
Mike, one thing that Tom's comments kind of bring up is a confusion I got this morning. I was down in Costa Mesa at the Professional Development Consortium conference, and someone said to me, well, if you're building Internet 2, does that mean we can't get Internet 1? And the answer is no. All Internet services that were there before are available to California schools. It's just now we also have the capacity in our network to do all these other things that we've been talking about today. And that's important because there are a lot of classroom teachers out there who are using Internet resources that they count on for everyday instruction.
Good. We got a poll coming up about the state of teacher education in California. It'll be interesting to see.
Is that a yes or
what
no?
people think about that. I think it asks how people view it, whether they view it as basically in good shape or not, and that's going to be coming up for our viewers in just a few seconds. Maybe it's time to get to the triangle. Tom,
The pyramid.
the pyramid. I'm sorry. The three-dimensional triangle.
Well, I think what we're trying to do within California is build a capability at the bottom level. We've been talking about the Digital California Network. That is really designed to serve every student, faculty, member, everybody engaged in the K-20 community across the state of California to increase this collaboration and information resources. At the second tier, what we call the second tier, we're even going to have a more robust network for high-performance research. There's a lot of major research applications that are going on within California. I mean, we're a very rich state in terms of the research community. So we need to have capabilities there to serve a smaller set of the K-20 community. And then finally, at the top tier, we have people in our institutions, our higher education institutions, who are really network researchers. They're researching the network, they're developing the new technologies for networking for tomorrow. So that's an experimental development capability. This is a very breakable network. This is less reliable than this. This is as reliable as you would get on the commodity internet, 7 by 24. This could break, but it doesn't break very often. And this is intended to be broken by those people who are doing this. We're going to be the first state to have this multi-tier capability.
Great. Well, I know that our talk today wasn't intended to be broken, but judging by some of the messages I've seen flowing forward, we've had some problems as we've gone along. We're also up against the Cal Poly women's basketball game, which is also going out through streaming, and that's winning by a slight margin over our presentation. So
that's most important.
And when are the NC2As?
Well, I'm an old Hoosier fan, so they go on at 4:38.
We'll get you out. Let's see. I have a question here about an existing program. So, questions about the Young Scholar Program, which actually originates here at Cal Poly. Broadcast college-level courses to high school throughout the state via cable TV and the internet. How can I get my school's distance learning programming involved with DCN? I guess you got to get DCN to your school first.
Well, I guess the answer to that is it's up to you, Mike.
Right. We'll do the best we can.
I mean, as a member of the DCN, a school that could originate content.
Right.
Mm-hmm. They could be a content provider. Mm-hmm. They have as much right to do that as any other member of the University of California campus or anyone else.
Right.
So if, for example, your school is producing original content you want to distribute, I guess the first step is make sure you're on the network. And then after that, what you want to do is probably determine that those folks who are receiving you, who are your intended receivers, are also network enabled, so that they can get the optimized signal from you.
Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example of a project that I saw recently. Nogales High School, which is in Hacienda La Puente School District here, I believe, is working with a school program in Scotland, and they're working together to produce a digital movie. Mm-hmm. And they recently had a teleconference, so they were using traditional TV-type technology to hold a teleconference. And, of course, this will be the kind of thing that people will be able to do over the network pretty soon. So that, right. But to see the faces of the students as they were able to talk in real time with their collaborators who they'd been working with for quite a while but hadn't met, who were in Scotland, was very exciting. And I know you mentioned before the program that I think is at Chaparral Middle School, where they're working with a school in Japan. Those are really powerful experiences for the students, and you know they're...
Well, even right here in your neck of the woods, Patrick Lair at Pomona Unified School District has developed a resource called RxNet, which helps translate test scores and other information for those folks who are supervising instruction can have good, solid. They're providing that also to Hacienda La Puente next door, using the network backbone to reach them. Mm-hmm. So there's an example of a school district originating content on the network.
And I guess that's one of the big differences between something like a broadband network and a cable TV network is that with a cable TV network, while schools do originate content, it has to go up to some central location and be broadcast out. This is a many-to-many kind of connectivity that clearly allows for a lot of different kinds of collaboration. John, we talked earlier about getting out the word about the Digital California Network, and I see you have a new brochure here that has been produced.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited about this because this is a Digital California Project brochure. I guess I hold it up for the camera. It's available, by the way, on the CENIC website, and maybe later we can flash the URL. But what's unique about this is this was not produced by us. This was actually produced by a consortium of companies who were called together by the governor, they were asked what kind of resources they had for our new network, and they came away from that conversation excited enough to say, we would really like to craft a vision statement that says, here's how we think California education can benefit from this broadband network. And so thanks to Apple Computer, Apex Learning, boy, I'm going to forget some people here, but Brainium, Big Chalk, and Chancery,
and Cisco.
And Cisco, thank you. We have a wonderful example of what companies who are in the education business think this network can do to help improve instruction in California. It's a very nice brochure, and we have it available both in PDF form and in printed form. And I hope maybe we can put a slide up. Oh, we have a slide up.
Got the CENIC website up.
And that's where you'll find it, under the applications coordination effort. You'll find the URL for the PDF.
I wanted to give you the results of our poll. No one chose exceptional as the level of teacher education in the state of California. Adequate, 13%, 50% requires support. That's good news, Richard. They think you need more support, so we want to get more support to the schools of education. And 38 chose abysmal. The fact that abysmal was misspelled may have been a factor in that. We're not sure. But I can assure you that it was no teacher educated here who spelled it, so made that mistake. But go ahead, John.
No, I was going to bemoan survey design, but
yes. We'd be interested, too, and we'll mention it again, we do want feedback on what you thought of the polls and the different aspects of this. We're doing a bit of experimentation, and we'll give you an email address at the end where you can send us your comments and your kudos and your brickbats, so we'll be looking for that. Richard, let's talk for a minute about how a teacher, we talked about the role of Digital California Network in teacher education. So we get Digital California Network to the teacher, to the school, but the teacher's not at school all the time. What about home? What about other places? And our students, what about them as they're in the community?
Well, I think that one of the goals that we have right now with our technology training program is called Team Matrix, which is a collaborative effort with the Los Angeles County CTAP project and several school districts in our area, is to develop units of practice. Each teacher that's involved in this training program has a unit of practice that's aligned to the state standards and curricular goals within their particular district and grade levels, and then to make those units of practice available on our website for our other teachers so that they have a chance to view the teachers actually teaching this lesson using technology and making that available to them, that they be able to view in their home or else in the school setting or else in the college teacher education program. I think one of the issues I wanted to raise, and somewhat responding to the poll that we received, I think there's oftentimes a confusion about what we mean by teacher education. You know, in the state of California, we have some 40,000 teachers that are teaching currently in the classroom that do not have a proper preparation for teaching. They don't have a teaching credential. They're teaching on an emergency permit. Yes, they have gone through our universities to get to their bachelor's degrees, for example, but they have not yet gone through the pedagogical portion of the education to be prepared to teach. 60% of those teachers are teaching right here in the LA Basin area. And so one of the big challenges that we have, and I think these are some of the areas that we really need to focus the power of the network that will enable us to support those teachers as they go through the teacher preparation process while they're engaged in practice, which is something that we've never really had to address before. And I think that, again, the network, by bringing us into the classroom, allows us to work much more closely to support those teachers as they develop those kinds of professional skills necessary.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's related to, we talked about schools versus homes and so forth. And we have a question from a member of our faculty here asking, well, if we put this high-speed network and we put it in very specific places, we put it in schools and libraries, aren't we kind of moving backwards by forcing teaching and learning to take place in particular places rather than allowing it to take place out in the community?
Well, again, I think that it enables the local school districts themselves to innovate on their own. Again, I would point to Pomona Unified School District and other school districts that are looking at providing broadband access for their teachers in their homes. Once the school districts become connected to the network and are able to develop their own wide area networks within the region, then they really have the potential, again, of breaking down the barriers to learning and making the places where learning can occur virtually anywhere within the community. We're working with Hacienda de La Puente in a project now to connect to the La Puente High School, which is part of the network, to the La Puente Community Center, which has an after-school program where 300 children come every day after school from kindergarten through 12th grade to participate in a variety of enrichment programs. That's a very powerful place where learning can occur. And we're also looking at, we have one of our big problems in the state of California is ensuring that as students complete their high school education, that they are prepared to matriculate at the higher education level, that they are not put into developmental courses for reading and mathematics and so forth, but really have developed those skills as part of their education in elementary, middle, and high schools. And we're really trying to focus on that problem because we know that's a very serious problem in the state of California, and how we can bring to those students the kind of learning support via the network, connecting our college students with those students in the classrooms, the teachers with our university faculty, and so forth.
Tom?
The person asked a very legitimate question. There are two barriers currently to making it anytime, anywhere. One is cost, and the other is availability. As much as the telecom providers would, and studies indicate that we have broadband capability to a vast portion of our population, the definition of broadband is very limited, and the cost barrier is still real. And I think we start where we can start. And we start where people congregate, and those are in schools, community centers, and we work out from there. Certainly the objective should be that a person should be able to communicate from anywhere, take in a learning experience, access information resources, certainly from the home, but that's just going to take a little bit more time. So we're taking it. The logical next step is if we don't get to the schools, we're missing a major portion of our population, probably 8 million to 10 million people out of the 30 some odd million people in California. So by getting there, we have at least a running shot at a large percentage of our population.
Thanks. I've got another question for you, John. You talked about in your brochure the different companies that are interested in the network, and obviously we can't expect that higher education or the colleges are going to provide all the content. Clearly publishers have played an important role in providing materials for classes. But What I wonder is if Cisco and Big Chalk and these various companies are so interested in this, why shouldn't they build the network? Why should the taxpayers of the state of California build it so that people can then sell their services on the network?
That's an interesting question. I think if you look at the cost to them as for-profit companies, I think if you also examine how hard it is for companies to work together on initiatives that don't directly contribute to bottom lines within whatever those horizons are that they're required of them. I think that there is a place, as with the interstate highway system, where the nation, the state, has an important role in making sure that resources are widely available to their citizens. And that's not really the mission of a private company. On the other hand, we do want to encourage companies to think about efficient delivery of high-quality instructional resource, which is their space, right, through this network. And that participation, of course, isn't free. I mean, it will have to find some way for those companies to either pay their share of the freight or in some other way work with us to deliver these resources at lower prices. And we are not yet, we're really in the very beginning stages of these conversations with companies, trying to understand what really works for them and how we can, and frankly, finding out which of the resources are the best. And that's why we're relying on programs like the California Learning Resource Network, that CLearn that Tom talked about, to help us understand which are the better resources and which ones we should be working with first.
Well, tell us a bit more about CLearn. What does CLearn do?
Well, the California Learning Resource Network, CLRN.org, is a listing service, basically. They are fully endorsed by the California Board of Education, and what they look at is what is known as an electronic learning resource. That is a supplemental resource, not a course-length one. The course-length resources go through the adoption process here in California. The CLearn looks at electronic learning resources that are parts of courses that deliver instruction to kids. They examine the quality of the resource in terms of technologies and its implementation, but most importantly, they look at very closely at the match between what the resource teaches, how it teaches it, and the California standards for student performance. And so when CLearn has examined a product and found it to be of substantial support for the acquisition of a skill, then we feel, that our network feels reasonably comfortable that these are high-quality resources and that we really ought to be looking at trying to figure out how to bring them to California classrooms. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going about the process of acquiring the resource for California schools, because there is currently in place only a very small project called C-Smart that arranges for discounts and statewide licenses. But we do have this sort of an agenda where we're trying to advocate very strongly for the state to realize that now that they have a delivery system that reaches every classroom, that the time is right for resources to reach every classroom. And so these are all sorts of, this is again that kind of a catalyst or as Richard called it, the role that sort of is starting things rolling.
Yeah.
So
I think that's one of the things that I just want to mention is, and Tom alluded to this earlier as well, is that there is a lot going on in California today. I mean, the CLearn, C-Smart are two of the SETS projects that, through the leadership of the State Department of Education, that are, the others are focusing on management information systems, student information systems, that allows us to move across information needs to really improve the outcome of the school. So there is a tremendous amount going on in California today, and part of our challenge is really to harness that and to move that forward in the same direction. And I think that, and I want to compliment, I think, the leadership of the governor in this, to recognize that the importance, the strategic importance for California to bring this together, and certainly to support the network in the way that it's been moving forward.
Well, let's talk about the politics of resources for a minute, because, correct me if I'm wrong, you would know a lot more about this, but there's I'm sure, a process, a textbook review committee, where when somebody brings in a new book, it goes through a committee, and there's all sorts of people who are both educators, but in some cases may have political agendas that are feeding into creating the approved book list for the state of California. I assume there's essentially an approved book list for the state of California. Now, as we move towards an Internet 2 kind of world, where schools are providing resources to other schools, where your learning resources in your 5th grade class might be coming from a 5th grade class in Stockton or San Diego instead of from Prentice Hall, what is the level of what kind of issues does that raise? Has this reached the level, is it on the political radar yet? And are people worried about having that kind of control? I mean, I think it's a good thing, but there may be people who don't think it's a good thing, who are concerned about losing control over the curriculum in the state. We're hearing anything about that? Has there been any pushback in that area yet?
Don't you think the bottom line will be, as John articulated at the beginning, student achievement? And so, while there will always be political agendas, if a program or information resource is helping advanced student achievement, at the end of the day, people are going to accept it. If it's not, they're going to jettison it very quickly. So it's a free, in a way, it will be a free enterprise system within a set of standards that California has been very aggressive about articulating for students.
So we're saying, the state is saying, here's what your students must know, now you go out and figure out how to do it. Is that really more the model you think we're moving towards?
Well, it's really a little bit more than that, because the state has set some very high standards for curriculum in the K-12 level. C-Learn is a part of the state adoption process to look at materials, both electronic and textbook materials, that are aligned to those state standards to really improve student learning. We've put in place an assessment system that really looks at the progress that we're making as a state in enhancing student achievement, and we have an accountability process called the API Index, where we can really measure schools' performance as well, with a series of both the rewards and sanctions for that progress. So I think that it's really all of those put together that are really driving this forward, and it's the technology piece, I think, that really it gives us a chance to, and technology, just like any other venture, I believe, has to demonstrate its power for leveraging learning in the classroom. But believe me, I mean, our children are coming to school expecting that. I mean, when you look at the number of Game Boys and so forth that are sold in this country, it's something like 1.2 million a month, when we have about 15 million children altogether in the country. I mean, this is very much a part of their experience in their lives, and so we have the challenge to really catch up to them. That's why I said that we're really entering a very different era when our children go to school knowing more about the technology and so forth than the teachers. So that knowledge is not just in the head of the teacher. The teacher is not just the source of knowledge, but the teacher is the facilitator for the children to be able to create technology, or to create knowledge, and the technology is very much an important part of that.
You know, we've sort of developed a tagline that this network is not about the wires, it's about the collaborations and the knowledge created using it. And that really is what this thing is, bottom line. And my colleagues in K-12, we've been at this a while, at least I have for a while. We're pretty practical people. If it doesn't show a result, we're going to move on to the next tool. And so our job here at DCP, now the DCN, is to make that tool available so that folks can start to prove it.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. We're just about done with our time. I want to thank our guests for joining me today, Tom West, John Vail, Richard Navarro. And I want to thank all of you for watching online and for participating in this experiment in online civic participation. This cybercast required the hard work and participation of many people on the Cal Poly Pomona campus. I want to thank Mark Waters for playing a key role in organizing this event. Thanks to Susan Coleman-Puz and Rudy Vargas for their leadership. Excellent support with the graphics was provided by Maria Reed from our Faculty Computing Support Center. Our tremendous video streaming staff, led by our TV engineer Art Phelps, includes Imran Hamid and Marshall Grice. Our stellar studio personnel include Rick Cass, Terry Hogan, Martina Newberry, Sonia Angulo, and several other people whose names I forget. Jerry Lerma and Eric Eng developed supporting web materials. We appreciate our partners at Avocast, Chris Bosnos, Drew Cameron, Jason Torchinsky, and Rob Terrell for their help. This is Mike Berman from the Cal Poly Pomona campus in Pomona, California, thanking you for joining us. If you have any comments or suggestions for our programming or our technology, and if you'd like to be notified about future digital educator events, please drop us an email at digitaleducator@csupomona.edu. That's digitaleducator@csupomona.edu, and we'll have that up on the website too. We'll see you again in the future. Thanks for joining us.